In the spring of 2024, I was learning to fly. Sometimes I'm still amazed they let me inside a plane. My landings were improving. My comms became a bit more second nature.
Executive Tower, Skyhawk 636 Lima Sierra, over Lake Zurich, inbound, full stop with Juliet.
Number 636 Lima Sierra, Executive Tower, fly eastbound and join the final for runway 16.
Fly eastbound to join final for runway 16, 6 Lima Sierra.
I was studying for my written exam, and I had spent hours planning cross-country flights with maps and compasses and obscure pilot gizmos like it was 1970. The process was exciting, stressful, nerve-wracking, and exhilarating. I don't know if you can see anything, but this is where I flew. Chicago Executive Airport, KPWK. It's about 12 miles north of O'Hare. It's a busy Class D airport nestled under the protective and intimidating umbrella of O'Hare's Bravo airspace. To be honest, staying under the Bravo wasn't a big deal. The big commercial jets are a non-factor. They just kind of wave and mock you from above. The real challenge were the Delta comms. You're trying to remember what to say, and you're being encouraged to expedite your landing because you're on a half-mile final going 70 knots, and there's a private jet barreling down on you at 150 knots, and the NBC helicopter's taking off at your 2 o'clock, and there's a line of planes waiting at the runway for their opportunity, filled with student pilots and licensed pilots, all watching your approach and judging you. That was intimidating, not gonna lie. It gave me a whole new appreciation for commercial pilots and everything that they do for us. My flight school was fantastic. They were very security focused, very maintenance focused, very checklist focused. They had a small fleet of Cessna 172s with glass cockpits, great planes, all relatively new. I was definitely flying in style. Wasn't cheap, but it was definitely style. I also had an awesome flight instructor. He took instructing seriously. He wasn't just building hours. He was constantly challenging me, testing my book knowledge, my flying knowledge. He was genuinely encouraging, and he really seemed to love flying himself. He let me make decisions. He let me mess up. He never talked down to me as a student. He almost seemed to like when I made mistakes because they were easy teaching moments. As weird as it sounds, I almost feel I let him down with this next part. I had, for quite a while, pushed off getting my medical certificate. I wasn't really worried about it. A lot of people will tell you, have it done before you start lessons, but I wanted to see how I felt about flying before dealing with the hassle. And then one day, after a particular flight lesson, my instructor turned to me and he said, "You're almost ready to solo." And one of the first things you learn in flight school is that you can't solo without a medical certificate. Honestly, in retrospect, I think part of me was dragging my feet on the medical because I was afraid to solo, but that's a whole different video.
Caution, terrain, terrain. Warning, terrain, terrain.
So I found a certified aviation medical examiner, went through the process, and ran into a couple of issues. Silly stuff in my opinion, but the FAA has its reasons. One of the requirements to answer the FAA's follow-up questions was to get notes from my primary care physician. To get those, I needed an annual physical, which I hadn't had in a couple of years. It went fine, and along with it were the typical series of blood tests: liver, kidneys, lipids, etc. Everything came back normal, pretty much as expected, except for one thing. I had a slightly elevated PSA. For those who don't know, PSA stands for prostate-specific antigen, which is a test often used as an indicator for, you guessed it, prostate issues. I didn't stress too much. The number was out of range, but not absurdly so. But my dad and my grandpa both had prostate cancer, so I decided to follow up with the urologist. The urologist said, "You're young. I don't think you have cancer, but given your family history, let's do a more advanced test." That number also came back high. He said again, "I don't think you have cancer. Don't stress about it, but given your family history, let's do an MRI." The MRI came back normal, showed nothing. I was relieved. He said, "Again, I don't think you have cancer. This is the best the test result could be, but because of your family history, let's do a biopsy." So we did the biopsy. This is my balcony. You probably can't see me very well right now because I wanted the sky to show up, but it overlooks a parking lot, but more importantly, it underlooks, if underlooks is a word, the direct flight path for people at landing at Chicago Executive Airport. I come out here a lot and I just stare up at the sky. Not so much in the winter. On my very first Discovery flight, we flew right over the top of the house. That was fun. I can never quite make out the tail numbers on the Cessnas, but I like to imagine my flight instructor up there teaching somebody how to chat with ATC, how to get lined up with the runway. It's a good place for thinking. I had prostate cancer. You know this, it's probably in the title of the video. Gleason score of 7, 3 plus 4, not the worst thing ever. Caught it very early. There was not a lot of cancer. It was only mildly aggressive. All good things. The MRI suggested it was contained, but there were some decisions to make.
All right, we gotta protect that nose gear. Go around, go around, go around, full power.
That cancer diagnosis hits you in weird ways. For part of me, it was just an obstacle, a fact to be dealt with logically. When I spoke to the doctor, it was clinical. When I spoke to loved ones, it was, "Don't worry about me, no big deal, I got this." In a lot of ways, it wasn't real. Prostate cancer especially is a slow-moving cancer. I wasn't about to die. I had treatment options. My dad had had it, and he had surgery, and there's been no recurrence. If you're gonna get cancer, this is one of the better ones to get, especially if you catch it early, as we did. But every once in a while, the realization sneaks up on you. I have cancer. The words almost aren't even real. A year later, they're still not real. I didn't want my family to worry. My daughters were in college. I didn't want them getting distracted from their studies. But inside, hidden away, there was a war raging between my logical self and my emotional self. The logical self won out most of the time, but in those moments when the emotional self mounted an aggressive charge, I was often caught by surprise. I'm not really afraid to die. I'm mostly afraid of failing the people who want me around. When I think of dying, I'm sad for two reasons. One, because there are so many things I still want to experience, and because I want to be around for my kids when they need me, the same way my parents have been around for me. My kids are in their 20s now. The conversations are so much more interesting than they used to be. They're experiencing adulthood. They're starting to catch those glimpses of what life is really like. I want to talk to them about it. I want to be there when they need me. Or even if they don't need me, I want them to know I'm around. I want them to know I'm there. They can just reach out and I'll answer. I know they can function on their own. I know they'll achieve whatever they set out to achieve. But damn, I know friends who have lost parents early in life. I know how hard that is for people. And I imagine my girls laying in bed at night, wishing they could talk to their dad, wishing they could ask him a question or let him know something exciting had happened. Those are the moments when cancer kicks your ass. The what ifs, the sense of failure. As logical or irrational or emotional as that idea is, it's no less real. So to my kids and to my family and to my partner and to everyone who didn't want me to die, thank you. I appreciate you. Glad I can still be around if you need me. But this is getting really emotional. Back to logistics. There was a choice to make. After my diagnosis, I had 3 options. Active surveillance, which means basically every 3 to 6 months you get another PSA test and or a biopsy to monitor the cancer's progression. 2, surgery, which removes the prostate completely. And 3, radiation, which attacks the cancer cells directly. I won't get into the pros and cons of each option. There's plenty of that material out there. Because of my age, my family history, my doctor's recommendations, and the general sentiment of all the people closest to me, I opted for surgery. My thinking was just get rid of it. If it's early enough and the cancer cells haven't spread, you have a pretty good chance of no recurrence at all. The doctor said if I had been, 15 or 20 years older, they would have recommended radiation, but because I was young enough and had higher probabilities of a full recovery, surgery was the better option. I think this information is changing like very quickly based on some of the stuff I've read, since then. And so, don't do what I did just because I did it and things are going pretty well. Do your own research, talk to your doctors. From what I've read, the radiation is getting much more targeted and focused, which would be a great thing. So progress is wonderful. I had my surgery right here 1 year ago today. I wanted to kind of mark the occasion. It lasted about 4 hours. I stayed overnight for a single night because that's what the doctor required. It was for the best because, it was kind of hard to walk most of the day after the surgery. I went home with, just a catheter. Arguably, the catheter was the worst part of the entire experience. So it was uncomfortable, but I'm not going to complain because some people have to deal with far worse. The results of the surgery were as good as we could hope. The pathology came back negative, 0 margins or negative margins, which means they didn't find any evidence of cancer outside the prostate. I am progressing normally. All my tests are perfect. Like I said, it's been 12 months. I've been going back to the doctor every 3 months to get everything tested and to get checked. I have had some side effects. Nothing that wasn't explained to me beforehand. My progression has been normal, and I am sure I am not alone wishing that I was progressing faster or had fewer side effects. But comparing the side effects to having cancer, I think I'll take the side effects all day long. Thinking back on the choices I made, I have no regrets. I think surgery was the right choice. Active surveillance would be weighing heavily on me constantly. So glad I did what I did. I thank all of the nurses and doctors and medical staff at this hospital for such great work. I did, however, decide to put my flight training on an indefinite hiatus. It was a pain communicating with the FAA as it was, And given they were causing all sorts of issues over a kidney surgery I had 45 years ago, I can't imagine the hassle of explaining to them my cancer surgery. It's just not worth the time and effort at this point. Primarily because, as much as I enjoyed flying, the one concern I always had was, can I ever fly enough to feel confident in my abilities? I was flying as a hobby, not as a career. And to maintain proficiency, I would need to fly at least once or twice a week. Forever. I know not everyone feels that way, but it sure feels to me like that's what would be necessary to maintain my skills. I don't see a future where that is going to happen. I have too many other interests. Flying is dangerous, to an extent, and if I'm going to do it, I want to mitigate that danger as much as possible. And to me, that means lots of hours and proficiency. If I'm not confident I can devote that time and effort, I'm doing everyone a disservice, including myself. I know not everyone feels that way, but for me, this feels like the right decision. I don't regret it. Maybe circumstances will change in the future. It doesn't have to be final, but the risk is just greater than the reward, and that's not the formula I've gravitated toward in life. So that's why I'm sitting here outside the airfield instead of inside a plane. I'm okay with it. And there's always Flight Simulator. So what am I doing now? Taking lots of walks, exercising more, trying to eat healthier, strengthening my relationship with my significant other, getting back to making YouTube videos. I had one flying short that hit 10 million views, which is fun, but this channel was never really about flying. As a student pilot, what am I qualified to say? I'm also working on my company, Street Lamp Media. I designed and 3D printed a street lamp for both fun and branding purposes. It's back there. You'll hear more about that on this channel in the future. I'm planning some new videos, some animation, and I'm building software for novelists, screenwriters, and everyone who reads what they write. I hope you'll stick around. If you're a writer or a creative, I'd love for you to check out Street Lamp Media. Link is in the bio. Nope, link is in the description. Thank you for watching. And if there's one last thing I'd like to say to all the men out there and all of the loved ones of men out there, get your PSA checked. That's it. Stay healthy, everyone. Hug your loved ones. Thank you for watching. Kevin out.